Grief, Let's Talk About It podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, Michael Gersche. Michael is amazing. If you guys didn't catch him on the conference and catch the story, this is going to be a perfect opportunity to hear it. Today he's here. He's going to be talking about it. Michael, how you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How are yourself?
I am doing awesome. Like you said, man, it's a beautiful day outside, enjoying the weather. And just looking forward to it. Thank you for being on.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity to share my story and hopefully make a difference, because that's what it's all about, right?
That's it, man.
We just want to inspire people to live better lives.
Yes. And like I said before, Michael has an amazing story. You talk about drunk driving, you talk about his own set of grief, his trauma, things like that, and the way that he was raised to be the man that he is today. So without further ado, Michael, can you tell the audience about yourself?
Sure. Born July 24th, 1970, and 8 weeks after that, my whole life changed. We talk about trauma and grief. Yeah. My father was driving us home from Long Island, New York. We lived about an hour and a half away. It was around 11 o'clock at night. My mom was next to my dad in the front middle seat. For all you kids out there, the older cars had a bench seat, so 3 people could be in the front. Yes. So as my dad driving, my mom was next to him, and I was next to my mom in a little baby carrier. My brother, who was 3, was sleeping in the back seat, and we were less than a mile away from our house at a red light. And as our light turned green, my father started to go to the intersection when a drunk driver plowed through the intersection and T-boned the car. And the force of the impact was so great, when the first responders arrived, they found 2 megals of mess. Remember, in 1970, they built cars to last.
Yes.
Not today, where you fart on a smart car and it blows over for 3 or 4 miles. They built cars back then. It pushed our car into a telephone pole and split the car all the way up to the dashboard. So when the first responders arrived, they found my father, they found my brother, and they found my mother. They didn't know I was in the car. 10, 15 minutes later, someone found me sandwiched between the door and the dash of the car. We were taken to the hospital. My brother didn't have a scratch on him. My mom was taken into surgery for her injuries. My dad had to get stitches on his face from the windshield breaking. And as for me, nearly every bone in my body was broken. My skull was completely fractured from one side of my head to the other. So the fact that I am 52 years old and talking to you today is nothing short of a miracle, and this is my best day. My injuries were so severe, I was life-flighted to another hospital in New York. My aunt lost count of how many blood transfusions I received, and somehow I survived. And my father at that point in time, he was going through a nightmare, and the doctors were saying, your infant son's touch and go. We have no idea if he's going to survive. And my mom was fighting for her life. And despite all my injuries, I grew up to be a competitive swimmer. I went to college on a swimming scholarship. I became a comedian, which is the only thing I ever wanted to do in life besides be Spider-Man. Photographer, speaker, author, and an advocate against drunk driving. And unfortunately, my mom passed away of her injuries the next morning. So September 20th, 1970, she passed away as the result of being hit by a drunk driver. And when I was in high school, I kind of put me on that path. It was, I didn't want other families to go through what our family went through. So we talk about trauma and grief. I've been an expert on grief and trauma since I was a kid, and never being processed and all those type of things. And luckily, me and my brother were raised by a Jamaican woman named Dolly. My grandmother put an ad in the newspaper for part-time help as my dad was working overseas. And here was this woman originally from Jamaica who was living in England, but she came to New York to visit her sister for 3 months. And she said, well, while I'm here, let me find a part-time job, right? So she answered the ad, came to the house, put her fingers into the crib where I was, and I latched onto him. I smiled, and she said, this family needs me more than going back to work in England or to be a nurse at this point in time. So she took the job. And my brother, who was 3 at the time, when he found out, he looked at my dad and said, hey, we're big men. We don't need any help. She's here for the baby, right? So what was supposed to be a part-time job turned into a lifetime. This woman raised me and my brother as her own flesh and blood. We are her sons. She's her mom. Sorry about that.
Oh no, you're good, brother.
That's my brother. Speaking of brothers,
There you go. See, he
right?
knows.
Uh, and we were raised by her and my dad. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be the person I am today, as you mentioned at the top of this.
Right.
She instilled with us, unconditional love and the human spirit, what the human spirit is willing to do.
Right.
And when her visa was up, my grandparents, sponsored her to stay in the country or kidnapped her. Really not too sure which one's which, but she's 92 years old. Her and my dad formed a relationship over time. And, it was just one of those things and how blessed we were, because it doesn't always happen to kids or people who lose loved ones in drunk driving, that they found this, replacement parent in a way.
Right.
So, between my dad and her and other role models, sort of, always had that love and support of, go after your dreams. I remember telling my dad I was going to be a comedian after grad school. And, most fathers might say that the hell you are, but my dad, he supported me because he knew at a very young age that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I think part of it was probably the car crash, a different mindset of living,
Right.
knowing we only have this one life and it's so precious. And whether he's successful at it or not, as long as we try, and do it, that, that's the bottom line. And, being a swimmer, earning, a scholarship, if you think back to how I was at 8 weeks old, crushed in, all cartilage, and the doctors had to put me on a special board. I had to go back, for months afterwards, for brain scans to make sure I wasn't brain damaged.
Yeah.
And many of my friends would say, well, maybe you do. No, don't judge me now, Tony. No, too late.
Oh, it's too late for that. It's too late for that.
Too late. And even when I went to speech therapy as a kid, we didn't know it was just normal childhood pains, or was there brain damage because of the car crash? No one can really say. And but I know how blessed I am, even through my own depression and grief. Even after my grandmother died at a very young age, my grandfather when I was 24, my aunt passed away in 2018, 90 days apart, and I ended up in grief counseling. I either wouldn't be here or I went to grief counseling. And as and through many of your listeners, it's not like we want to die; we just want the pain to stop. And luckily, I asked for help because one of the catalysts was I couldn't send my brother, Dolly, other family members back to the same cemetery 3 times within 6 months. We already did it with my aunt, and the rabbi is like, "Hey, good to see you guys again, just for this reason." And I went to grief counseling, and my grief counselor was like, the very first statement out of her mouth was, "Hey, let's talk about your mom's death and how that impacted all your relationships." And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to talk about my dad and my aunt, but she was right. I was 47, 48 years old and never really processed and worked through my mother's death. And it was amazing because I knew I was the one that was broken. I needed help. I needed a fix. And it was a rough 6 to 7 months of deep dive, counseling. And for anyone listening, when you go through grief or trauma, I and Tony, same as you, we highly encourage, counseling and getting help, because we can't do it all on our own. It's just too heavy. And, with depression, and, one of the things I love about you is sharing your story and helping other people, because we always think we're in it alone, and we're not.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing that, even for Day, getting that message out, going, you're not alone in this. You have us, you have other people. And we know depression is like that warm blanket on a cold night because it feels very good. But, get those tools, get that help to, maneuver, through it.
Yeah. Let's dive into that a little bit, because you're absolutely correct. We've talked about this. When you're going through the stages of grief as a male, right? It looks totally different. And like we said, we always recommend people to go get counseling. First and foremost, if you're struggling, go out there and get counseling. Your mental health is important. You are important, right? So when we talk about going through the motions of it, you was 8 weeks old when the crash happened.
Yeah.
So how much of a memory, when you were talking about your mother, how much of a memory, was there? Because I know sometimes it can be embedded in your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, none. My brother remembers because he was 3, but as for
Mhm.
me, nothing. And between July 24th and the car crash, all those what ifs come into your every year,
Right, right,
and
yes.
it's like, how was, did I let her sleep? Did I make her laugh? All those things. What dreams did she have for me? My dad was a totally different person, obviously before and after the crash.
Right, of course.
All those things, but I have no memory of her at all. All I knew is Dolly, who raised me. My brother, he recalls bits and pieces of the crash and bits and pieces of my mom, but not a lot.
Right,
Um, his transition to Dolly and my dad leaving was traumatic because he had to adjust to Dolly. He had to adjust to separation anxiety. My dad went to work, he would freak out. They had to do different things because one day mom didn't come home for him. And as a 3-year-old, you're thinking dad's going to leave and not come back.
right,
So
yes.
my thought process and trauma wasn't, with my mom's death wasn't until I got a little bit older, probably high school. And, because every school form I had to write mother's name deceased. And you get used to it. No one asks why. And that's all you know as a kid, right?
Right,
Uh, so it wasn't until I was a teenager in college you start thinking about the what ifs and whys and how come I'm alive and not my mother, and I would swim angry. I would be angry at God, angry at Harvey Dennison who killed my mom,
mm,
angry at my father for never talking about it, not realizing he couldn't. Um, it was all those type of things. So, unfortunately, no memories of my mom, and that's the hard part. If I had something that
mm.
would be helpful, but I have nothing, and that's what I think drives that depression and anxiety and trauma
Right,
so
yes,
much.
yes.
I read books about trauma and not having that mother's touch, how that impacted relationships, not knowing, as an infant, that first year is so pivotal. And after the car crash, people were picking me up in a pillow. I didn't have that human touch like most babies.
Right,
And to realize what happened at that point in time affected relationships down the road too.
yes.
And then you kind of go, okay, how do I break this cycle? And I think if you don't know that information, you're going to just keep going, it's Groundhog's Day until you realize that's why. What can I do differently now so
Right.
I don't continue? And it's eye-opening, it's fascinating, it's a relief. It's all those things together, knowing the whys and hows. But the one thing that still haunts me in a weird way is not having memories of my mom. And that's what I lost. And that's why I fight so hard on doing what I do to prevent other people from going through it. Tomorrow is my brother's birthday, and I'm doing a program for DUI offenders at my local court. And it'd be I've been doing it for 10 years, and it's an audience I never thought I would ever speak in front of. But it's been the most rewarding audience of my speaking career because you watch those people change in those 90 minutes. And when they buy a book or donate to the foundation or give you a hug, afterwards, and those people should have been the enemy, right? And that's where I
Right,
learned not.
right,
They didn't do anything to me, but how can my story impact them so they don't do anything to anyone else?
right.
And it's so powerful to see them change. And it's not about me, it's about them. And as you know, when you
Yeah,
inspire someone to change for the better, Tony, it's hard to verbalize because it's just an incredible feeling to do.
yes. I always say that when people ask me why I do the work I do, I go, because it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about the people that we talk to. To see these men, see these individuals get out of their own head and start to understand that their life is a lot more than what they perceive it to be, right? To give them hope for the most part, because they look at me, I'm a little bit of a younger guy, be 49 this year, and but I've gone through it, you know. And so, there's people out there who are like, "Oh, he's still a pup." I'm like, "Yeah, I probably am, but this pup got a little bit of a story. I got my battle scars, right? We all got our battle scars." So, the biggest thing I want to, well, one of the things I want to ask: when you decided to get into helping and talking to individuals that have been convicted of drunk driving, what was that deciding factor? Because that came a little bit later, correct?
Yeah, it happened 10 years ago. And oddly enough, it was a woman that was a waitress at my home comedy club, now worked for the judge, and we were introduced.
Mhm.
So it's weird how comedy played such a huge part of that.
Right.
I didn't know what to expect. I was nervous. I was like, well, I'm just gonna do my thing, I'm gonna do some comedy up front. So they never expect it because they walk in the room, they're pissed off, their arms like this,
Yes.
they already have bad attitudes, and then you let the first joke fly out, and when they laugh or smile, you kind of go, now I have them. And uh and I just did my thing, and you hope for the best. And I still remember walking to the parking lot for that very first program, and a 19-year-old girl said, "Thank you for making me realize my son needs me more than alcohol." And
Yeah.
even one guy said, "Don't call this a show." So I used to call it a show because it's more than a show. It's like a program or presentation. I went, "My God, he's right. It's not a show."
Right.
It's just, like I said, it's hard to verbalize when you change them and they're so full of angst, and the cop did this to me and I wasn't drunk and all this stuff, but they know
Yeah.
what they did. And all we're doing is, they have a chance to walk out of that room a little bit differently. But they have to do the work, just like we've done the work in counseling,
Right.
right? If
Right.
they really want to change, then they will hear the message and they will do whatever it takes not to repeat it again. And that's all you can hope for. But it's been an amazing ride. And, to think I've been doing it for 10 years now, they know we make a difference. And it's humbling, and I'm honored to do so, to do stuff in my own community every month that I know that's going to, change lives.
Now, comedy, right? How did you get into comedy? I know you said you've always wanted to do it when you was a
Yeah.
kid and everything. So how long have you been a comedian?
Gosh, my entire life, because I was always making people laugh as a kid, so I got into magic. So I was inspired by Harry Anderson, who did
Okay.
comedy magic. So I did magic since I was a teenager to my early 20s.
Mhm.
And then I started doing stand up. First time I did it, I was still in high school. I did it twice, and then in grad school, one of my classes was the woman that booked the local talent.
Okay.
And I did open mic night, got a call back for a second night, which the callback was on the night that my group was supposed to do a group project presentation in grad school. And I asked the professor, I go, "Hey, can my group go first instead of last? Because I have to be at the comedy club by a certain time." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So that tells you where my mindset was in grad school for my last semester, not looking for a job in higher education, but comedy.
Yes.
So it was just everything since I was a kid. Um, up to that time. And I love doing it. I love the creative process. Now I'm not, on the road anymore or doing any of that type of stuff, because I chose the path to do my program instead,
Right.
which combines humor and my story. And there's days you kind of regret, not pursuing comedy full time, you know, but I didn't like the lifestyle either. You're driving 3 or 4 hours for $100. You gotta be a road dog for that. And I understand
Yes. Yes.
you have to
Yes.
make any money. And I thought, well, I'm making a difference doing this program, and I'm making people laugh in it too. It's a win-win. It's combining everything I really want
Right.
and need to do. So it's a blessing that I could, combine both of those. And being, immature, even at age 52, almost 53, helps also. But there was just something very powerful of making someone laugh. That's my drug of choice. And if you
Yes.
make someone laugh, even when we do grief or trauma, man, you could take them anywhere on your journey, because that humor, that laugh lets down our guard, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I've done programs after mock funerals where the students' eyes are just glazed over, and you throw that first joke out there and they all laugh, and then they go, take that breath, and it's like, now they all feel human again,
Mhm.
right? Because we can only take so much doom and gloom, but if we laugh, then we kind of feel like ourselves, and that's such a good outlet to have. And yeah, so everything since I was a kid till today, making people laugh, whether it's on stage or off. I would say a good thing I was blessed with a sense of humor to deal with grief, tragedy, and trauma.
Yes.
And I don't think everyone taps into their sense of humor as much as they should. And it's
Totally
important
agree.
that you do, especially with grief and trauma, still use your funny bone, man, to cope in a healthy way.
Right.
Um, I think that's what it is. We can laugh at the insane things with trauma and grief. And, I may laugh at something with, my friend's death, for John, that's funny to me. You may not laugh at it, but if it makes sense to us, we laugh at it. That's all that matters, right?
Right. Yes.
That makes us feel better. You may not understand it, but it's my coping mechanism, and it's a safe way to do it. So, comedy's always been a part of my life. And without it, I don't know how I would survive.
Understand that laughter is good medicine, man. Laughter is definitely good medicine.
Yep.
Sometimes it takes us a little bit, speaking from someone on the other end where, when I've gone through these things, there was times where I didn't want to laugh. There was times where I just wanted to be angry, right? But then, yes, I found my laugh again. Even though it was a small one, it was something, right? And I don't think it was, I think I was at that time when I found it, I was thinking about a moment where, and I love this story right here. My son, me and my son was in the house and he was looking out the window, right? And I'm thinking he's looking at his friends, but he wasn't. So now, this is early spring. We had a big old blueberry bush in our front yard, and he was looking at the blueberries, but he was watching the bees. So now I can hear the bees, right? And he turns back around, he sits back down, he goes like this, and he jumps back up on the couch, he's looking out the window again. And so finally he goes, Dad, can I go outside? I go, yeah, you can go outside. I said, but leave the bees alone. He goes, no, Dad, my friends are outside. I'm gonna go play with my friends. I said, okay, leave the bees alone. Okay, so goes, grabs his stuff and runs outside. His friends wasn't out there. He didn't think I knew because I had the front door open. I'm watching him. So, he goes out there and I'm thinking to myself, he's about to mess with the bees. About 2-3 minutes go by, I hear him screaming, Dad, Dad, Dad. And so I look out the door and he's running. He's just running, trying to get the bees off of him. And he's trying to run to the house. So I hurry up and lock the door. I said, keep going, keep going. You're not coming in the house. And so about 2 minutes, he comes back. He finally gets the bees off of me. He comes back in, Dad, the bees was getting me. I said, I told you to leave them alone. He goes, yeah, you did. And so I think that's where I found my laugh at, that little bit of laugh. And I was just sitting back and I was just like, man, no. And it was those moments right there that, I realized how important it was to have that laugh again and to see others do it. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing, because it is important, helping people find that inside of them. It's a little bit, right? But it's more than what they've had in quite some time.
Yeah, right. It doesn't have to be a lot, man. We just want to crack on that armor, as Brene Brown, often says, that armor that we put on. And
Right.
we get a little bit, then we could maybe get a little more laughter and a little more laughter and a little more. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've done a comedy show when people come up and say, hey, thank you for making me laugh tonight. I really needed it. And, me and my fellow comedians, when we hear that, it melts our heart, because it's like, we take our immaturity and all that stuff and, we're on stage doing it, not realizing that difference that we make.
Mhm.
And when you hear that, it's just another amazing experience to have, to make a difference in someone's life.
Love that, man. I love that. Truly love that. Now, you said something. I want to circle back around to it and just touch on it a little bit. How was it being raised by a Jamaican woman? Because I mean, I've seen it before, but when you said that, it always amazes me. Because you was being raised by a Jamaican woman. This woman, saw you and was like, I'm taking care of these ones right here.
Yeah, it takes a special person. Well, I tell people that I'm Jewish Jamaican. Of a white Jewish family and a black Jamaican family. Great way to grow up. Diversity, right?
Yes.
Especially through the 1970s, and then from New York to Miami, Florida, and you blend everything. But it was just normal to us. Right. It was just family. It wasn't black or white. It was just, this is our family. And it was just a cool dynamic on the diversity side of things.
Mhm.
But with her, and especially when that's all you know, my brother and I joke with her and say the discipline you gave us would be considered child abuse today. She loved me as her own, she beat me as her own. I'm not saying I deserved all of them, but maybe one or two, the belt across the butt. But she treated us better than most biological parents. And for example, in Miami, when it got cold and we swam outdoors, she would stand by the pool deck with a towel waiting for me. I would hop out of the pool. She'd wrap me up in her arms and run like this, carrying me to the car, which the heat was on. And she had a thermos of either hot tea or hot chocolate. Didn't see any biological parents doing that for their own kids.
Right.
They made them freeze. She is a heart of gold. And what she taught me about, again, compassion, unconditional love, and what the human spirit could do for each other. And I say this in my program, I go, man, if we had a lot more Dollys in this world, our society would be a lot better.
Yes.
Because it was discipline, but also, inspirational and all that stuff. And when I wrote the book, she goes, don't use my name. I go, do I still embarrass you? But she thought she deserved no recognition for what she did. I go, that's why I have to share what you did. My story is her story. And everyone who reads the book say, I have to meet Dolly. Someone messaged me today who's listening to the audio, which goes, I think I have to meet Dolly. I go, everyone says that. No one cares about me, but they all want to meet her, which is fine. She's 92. She lives in South Florida. You want to meet her, go on down. But she's so humbled by that. She thinks she deserves no recognition. And, what she did for me and my brother, and then people who met her through our lives and stuff are much better people too, because they all love her. And it's hard to verbalize it sometimes, the amount of love she gave us, and knowing what my life would be like if I didn't have her. And the fact that she's 92, my dad passed away, 5 years ago, and it's family, right? And they had a relationship, they formed, that love and stuff, and it was just devastating for all of us. But it was supposed to be a part-time job, turned into that lifetime, and things just naturally happened. Love and family doesn't mean it's by blood, right? It's love and emotion and all those things that go into it. And she's just an amazing person. And it gets me emotional when I think about how lucky we were. You take a horrible situation of losing her mom, and here was this saint of a woman. Timing, fate, all those things played a part of it. And she allowed me to be the person I am today. So either she takes the blame or she takes the credit. Either one works.
There you go. I love that. So your book, where can people find your book? And do you have a copy of it that you can show people what it is?
I'm prepared.
See?
Yeah, it's called The Magical Life, A Son's Story of Hope After Tragedy, Grief, and a Speedo. Because I was a swimmer. I'm not wearing one now. It's not that type of podcast, people. Okay. Of course, you don't know from here down. No one wants to see me in a Speedo anymore. But it had a funny title, with it. So that was it. The book you find on Amazon.com. If people want to email me for an autographed copy, they could do that, through the website. But they can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, those type of places. And it took me 20 years to write, and because I like naps, so I procrastinated a lot. But a good friend of mine, Greg Morton, who's a great comedian, the first time we met, heard about the car crash, heard about Dolly, and he's like, you got to write a book about your life. And this is like 96, 97.
Mm-hmm.
And he made me promise, and it took me a while, but I fulfilled my promise to my friend. And that was the best part, because we worked together right when I finished the main writing of everything. And I could look him in the eye and say, hey, Greg, I fulfilled my promise. And then for him to read it and then to give his feedback is, because he said, you made me laugh and cry within like the first, you made me laugh and cry like in the same sentence, those type of things. And it was, and then to have other people read it that I don't know, and how it helped them with their grief and trauma.
Right.
And, as we said before, when you make a difference in someone's life like that, it's pretty amazing. and I didn't know what to expect. I had family members who said, we thought you were always fine, when they found out about the depression and the trauma that I thought about my mom. They didn't know. I was a little kid. I was busy going to swim practice, going to school, pretending to be Spider-Man or a member of KISS, doing magic. No one knew, because I was an infant. So you can't fault them either if they didn't know. And, if you're, 7, 8, 9, how do you verbalize it anyway?
Right.
And then you keep it to yourself, because as men, we keep it to ourselves. And I emulated what my father did. He bottled it all up inside. So I role modeled my dad's behavior when it came to trauma and grief until it almost killed me several times. I was wanting to meet my mom. So sort of doing something stupid that was going to happen. And I thought, well, my mom didn't sacrifice her life so I could end mine sooner. Right. But, the book, when I went through counseling, I finally had an ending for the book. And I wrote about, from the car crash through my grandmother's death when I was a kid, my grandfather, my best friend, my college days and meeting my best friend. So there's a lot of humor in there. There's lots of good stories, but, it's, I think it makes a point of, here's trauma and grief with a good ending in terms of, getting help and probably inspiring people to look at themselves and what they can do to help themselves through trauma and grief. I mean, you read it, so what did you think of it?
I'm still reading it, man. I'm definitely still reading it. Like you, I like to take naps too. So, but they keep me pretty busy, man. With
Right.
the GGN and the Memories of Us, they keep me pretty busy. So whenever I get a moment or something like that, and I can take a breather, I open it up and I start reading it. So I'm not gonna give my input just yet. I want to read the whole thing.
Okay.
We definitely will talk about it. We definitely will talk about it. I think it's one of the books that I'm going to recommend for the book club that we're starting, awesome. GGN, because I think it's going to be a good read. The magic of life, man. But it's amazing so far, man. And everything, like listening to you said, it's like listening to the audiobook right now. Yeah. And I think that's the amazing part. But I'm still going to read it because, I'm saying, I love to read anyway. And you've given me this beautiful gift. People, if you haven't already, like I said, I haven't read the whole thing yet, but from where I'm at right now, amazing. Go out there and get it, please. You guys will not be disappointed. Michael, thank you. Thank you for the book. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being on today, man. You guys are going to see much more of Michael as well. Guys, we got a lot more stuff coming up. So, you guys,
whether you want to or not, I'm sticking around.
Oh, yeah. You don't have a choice. I tell everybody, once we get to this point right here, you don't have a choice. I am not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. We're stuck like super glue, buddy.
Well, I appreciate it. And it's really cool because I spoke to other people I met, through LinkedIn or through your group, other men, and it's so refreshing. Because now we're talking about grief and trauma like we're talking about sports.
Right, yes.
And it's normalized and it's no big deal to us. And I think that's our hope for other, especially men, to feel comfortable talking about grief and trauma like we're talking about the game. And that's such a beautiful thing to see.
Yes.
And it's hard. Again, it's hard, when I'm stuck for words that, I'm really emotional about it because I don't know what to say, to talk about people about their own grief and trauma and going, I understand, and I've been there. And so to have this platform and the opportunity, Tony, thank you so much.
The appreciation goes both ways, brother. I promise you it does, because without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do what I do and have this platform. But I'm glad to have this platform so we can have these discussions. I love seeing men being able to open up now, to be able to talk about these things as is normal, as we should, right? But for the women out there, I think it gives them a different perspective as well about what their men go through when we experience these, extreme griefs and, unfortunate traumas. And it helps them be able to communicate with their men. It helps, our friends understand what we're going through, to be able to open up the doors to have these conversations. But it also, well, not but also, it opens up the doors for us to explore those paths of healing, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's truly important, man. You know, and like I said, now I have an idea. I'll talk with you about it after the show. But I think it's going to be something beautiful, though. And I was just thinking about it. I was like, we need to do this.
Okay.
We need to do something pretty amazing, man. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And with that being said, where can people find you?
So they can find me on Facebook, Michael, Gersche, MichaelGershe. They could also find me on themagicoflife.org. That's the website. You can see a link to the book for there, Amazon.com for the book. Also, you could do, my name as a search or The Magic of Life, and you can just find the mug right there. It's on Audible. It's also on Kindle as well. So Facebook is the one I'm used to. I'm addicted to that. I'm on Twitter, but I have no idea what the hell I'm doing on Twitter anymore. So LinkedIn, where you found me to, or where we connected through my
Yes.
but Facebook, Instagram, because I do photography. So it's GERSHEPIX, pick. That was really creative. So and well, that's kind of different. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram, the ones I use the most. So you see my pictures and and the fun that I like to have.
Awesome, awesome. And if you had any inspiring words to tell anyone, what would you tell them right now?
I will end. I'll probably do the same thing way I end my program, and that is, if you're having a bad day, just close your eyes for a few seconds. Put these two fingers up where your pulse is, and close your eyes, and feel that heartbeat and that pulse. And just block out everything else that's going on, that stress, the trauma, the grief, all the BS in our life. Just focus on that heart beating and that thumping, and realize how awesome it is to be alive. So if you're having a bad day, instead of doing harm to yourself or harm to other people, whatever, just close your eyes for a few seconds, feel that pulse. And if you feel your pulse, you'll live your dreams. And that's really the magic of life.
To everyone out there listening to this right now, please go look up Michael. He's amazing. Get his book, read it, man. You guys will not be disappointed. And for the audience out there, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support and allowing us to be able to bring these stories to you guys. I am Tony Lynch. I am your host. I am the founder of the GGN. So if you are a grief worker out there, go over there and check us out on Facebook or LinkedIn. We're doing some amazing things over there. If you're male going through grief and trauma right now, look me up, Members of Us. And don't forget, also, I know Michael put his book out there. I got to put mine out there too. So, you guys don't know that I co-authored a book called Relentless: Empowering Stories of Overcoming Adversity. We are now on Amazon, and we are #1 Amazon bestseller. Please go over there and look at that too. I'm chapter 21, but we have so many amazing stories in there as well. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, Michael. Thank you for being here. Audience, thank you for tuning in. We love you guys. And until next time, peace.